Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Well, here is Dom Giordano at Talk Radio 1210 in Philadelphia. Dom with an M, sitting in tonight with a lot of great guests and you, and a story that we started with on, let's go back, I guess, Tuesday night, I want to say at least, then gave you more reaction last night, then a bigger reaction today, and probably a bigger tomorrow. I'm talking about these obnoxious Democrats who still will not tell us specifically why did they put this montage together. And they're trying to say, well, just a reminder to the troops that they do have the right, the duty to refuse orders that are illegal, immoral, unconstitutional. Yeah, right. We played you yesterday this Congressman Crow with Martha McCallum saying Martha McCallum doesn't trust the intelligence of the military if she doesn't realize they're just reminding them of this duty. Why are they we know why, Trump. And then late last night into the morning, President Trump, I would have tightened this up a bit, but the general thrust of it was, you do know if you are adjudged by a jury of your peers, military, it wouldn't be military court, they're not in the military now. I don't know what court, and I think the Justice Department ought to be moving on this quickly. If you get convicted of sedition, essentially treason here, by trying to disrupt the chain of command, then you can be hanged for that. And oh my goodness, you've been following this maybe today, maybe not. All hell is broken loose. So here is clearly the person I think is the number one ringleader. There are a couple of them. This is Elisa Slotkin. This will be cut one. She's the pretty much new senator from Michigan. She's the one that worked in the CIA as an operative, and I think she was one of the driving forces. Yeah, let's all get together and let's get these people revved up, or at least the American people, to believe that the military is completely unhappy with President Trump when recruitment numbers are jumping out of the roof. Listen to Slotkin now, her telling what she thinks this means, accusing Trump of political violence.
I'm Senator Elisa Slotkin, senator from Michigan, former CIA officer. Earlier today, President Trump threatened myself and a number of other service and veteran lawmakers with arrest, trial, and death because he didn't agree with a video we put out this week. This really isn't about those of us who made the video. This is about who we are as Americans and how we're going to engage with people who we disagree with. I would hope that people of all backgrounds, Democrat, Republican, Independent, would agree that threatening death for people you disagree with is beyond the pale of who we are as Americans. I love this country. It has given me everything, everything. And I refuse to believe that this is the new normal. I refuse to believe that we're going to use fear and intimidation against people we disagree with. And I'm not going to be forced away from speaking up on behalf of my country. I swore an oath to the Constitution many times, most recently less than a year ago as a senator. To the Constitution, not to any one man, not to any one president. And I abide by that oath. For me, I believe in the power of this country and that we are better than our current politics represent. And I refuse to be intimidated out of defending the country I love.
All righty then. They still have not given us a specific. They refuse to give us a specific about why, what was their intent of doing this now. They are the ones that are un-American. They are trying to weaken the chain of the command, trigger people to show resentment toward Trump using the military. That might be sedition. You know, I'm not sure that a court would, but it's worth an investigation just to get them under oath and to ask them what their intent was here. The intent is clear to me, and their cowardice, even though I give credit for their military service, is they will not specifically tell us what the heck it is that is triggering this. Now, I'm looking at the polling today, and one thing I suspect, and I want to ask you about this, looking at the polling, we're seeing that even on Fox, it is a very close call, and in some polls it's not, that the majority of the American people do not support taking out those Venezuelan drug boats. I do. You heard that last night. We had on Colonel Allen West. I do support that. But it's 50-50 at best. Spit it out. Is that what you're talking about? No, they keep with the generalities. They keep on saying the same straw man, bringing up all kinds of things like that. 833-482-5337 gets you to me, Dom Giordano. If you don't agree with that, that's fine. But trying to trigger people into action militarily to break the chain of command here is what you're trying to do, or something even worse. A revolt against Trump, opening up more resistance in the military. And you still refuse to be honest and just have the conversation. What is it that triggered this? What zone, what area do you think where you're troubled that Trump might be giving illegal, immoral, unconstitutional orders? They won't talk about that. All right, this is Cut 5. Here's Representative Jason Crow. We played you him last night on CNN. He's attacking Caroline Leavitt. Now, this guy's smart enough to realize that he got caught up in it. He looked bad yesterday with Martha McCallum, saying that Martha McCallum, of all people, was degrading the military. Martha McCallum, just beyond belief out of anybody that's a pundit out there. So here's Jason Crow talking about this idea that Caroline Leavitt, the president's spokesperson, is lying about him.
There is no specific thing out there that made you decide now is the right time?
That's right. To be clear, we are not calling on folks right now to disobey any type of unlawful order. Right? There is very real and deep concern about what this president has threatened to do over and over again. There are 3 more years left of this administration. If we are not talking about this and having a conversation about it and demystifying this conversation, then we are not fulfilling our duty. We are reminding people that have taken the oath what that oath requires of them to do.
I want to play a little bit more of what Caroline Leavitt had to say from the podium at the White House today, and we'll talk about it on the other side. Let's watch.
The sanctity of our military rests on the chain of command. And if that chain of command is broken, it can lead to people getting killed. It can lead to chaos. And that's what these members of Congress who swore an oath to abide by the Constitution are essentially encouraging.
Is that what you're encouraging?
No, Caroline Leavitt is outright lying, actually. What she said from the podium is that there's encouragement of disobeying lawful orders. We actually said the exact opposite. We simply reminded folks of what the Constitution and law requires. But again, their lying and their propaganda and their twisting of the truth is an attempt to silence dissent and to use fear and intimidation.
All right, so Crow now saying Trump is a general threat. You have 3 more years of this. We just wanted to get ahead of it all of a sudden, and it's not anything specific. That makes it even more ridiculous. If there were a specific area that they want to get the debate going over and ask the military to consider that, let's hear it. No, Trump's a general threat, and you have 3 more years of it, so we had to give this all-out warning at this point. All right, we're going to talk about that and a bunch of other things that happened yesterday in the Congress with Congressman Mark Harris coming up. And we'll take your calls with Dom sitting in tonight on America Tonight, 833-482-5337.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, Dom Giordano sitting in on America at Night. Our guest is Representative Mark Harris from the 8th Congressional District, Republican, North Carolina. And boy, in the Congress, they were really busy yesterday. Congressman, we'll get to all that in a second. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Hey, Dom, thank you so much for having me. Honored to be with you.
Thank you, Congressman. Quick question for you. In Congress today, what was it like to see this back and forth around that video that was made by these Democrats, the president's reaction? What are you thinking about it?
Well, it was amazing to just ponder. You made a great point. I happened to be here in your last segment, and I think the fact that they still cannot explain what they were talking about. Mm-hmm. And I don't know about you, but I'm not buying that they were trying to say something in the future could happen in the next 3 years. That's not the sentiment that you saw when you watched that video. I mean, at the end of the day, to me, they are just, it's Trump derangement syndrome at its best. And anything that they're for or the president's for, they're going to be against. And what's so dangerous about it, it's undermining authority. And, our United States military depends on authority and the respect for authority and following orders and those kind of things. And for these folks who were in the military to discount that and to undermine the authority of the commander-in-chief and ultimately undermine the authority of any commanding officer is just a dangerous thing to do.
Yeah, I put it that if it's some podunk office in the agriculture department, deep state, and they slow walk something Trump wants, bad enough, political, horrible. We're dealing with life and death here. Let's talk about yesterday. Boy, a panoply of these D.C. crime bills, the no cashless bail. I'm in Philadelphia with Larry Krasner, who has been voted probably the worst of the Soros progressive attorneys, and I would agree. But we still have cash bail here in Philadelphia somewhat. What were you guys trying to do in the Congress yesterday?
Well, I think at the end of the day, we're trying to call attention to the real problem that we have going on around the nation, particularly in our major cities. Charlotte is a great example of that, where we witnessed just back in September the brutal murder of the young Ukrainian girl, Irina Zarutska. And she was murdered by a man that had been arrested 14 times, had spent 5 years in prison, was known to be schizophrenic, and yet sat in front of a magistrate, and a magistrate had the authority in North Carolina to basically just have him sign a statement saying that he promised to show up at his next hearing. That was less than a month before he just put that knife in Irina Zarutska's neck. And I mean, we had a field hearing there in Charlotte, and there's just been a lot of outcry. We've got to get these policies that are going on in our blue cities, in these Democrat-controlled cities. We have got to get their policies back in line. Otherwise, we're going to continue to see this spike in crime and putting these criminals back out on the streets. And I think that was the point of what we were trying to do, was call attention to that once again and hold people accountable.
Something new here that I saw that listeners, I think, will be very interested in. You and a bunch of others are trying to pass a law where illegals, that people that are here illegally, would not get taxpayer-funded abortions.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was one of the big things that we just introduced actually today, was the No Taxpayer-Funded Abortion Travel for Illegal Aliens Act. It's what it's called. And Congresswoman Mary Miller and I are very thankful to be working together and co-leading this bill. We had 28 of our lawmakers that signed on as co-sponsors almost immediately when we put the bill in motion. So we've got 30 of us. And basically it just says no American should ever have their tax dollars used to shuttle illegal aliens across state lines for abortions. This was a Biden-era policy that really just turned federal programs into taxpayer-funded Ubers to go get abortions. And this is going to put an end to that. And I'm very grateful for it.
Talking with Congressman Mark Harris. Also, I've only been to Charlotte once. I'm in Philadelphia, so maybe I'm more cynical. I don't think of Charlotte as this haven for people that are here illegally, but the numbers of kids that are out of school this week because of what's going on. Tell us about Operation Charlotte's Web Has that been effective?
You know, it has been effective, Dom. We ended up, in fact, the Charlotte's Web reports were coming out today. WBTV there in Charlotte was reporting that the Border Patrol had now moved on. I think maybe there was some indication they were going to move to Raleigh, North Carolina. And then I think it was always clear that this was going to be a short stint in North Carolina on their way to New Orleans, which was going to be another major operation. But, yeah, it was brought to my attention just in the last day or two that this group that's actually called the Migrant Policy Institute, which is not necessarily a conservative, overly conservative group, but they like to chart and know where these immigrants are, actually reported in Mecklenburg County alone, that one county, which is where Charlotte is, that there's 100,000 illegal immigrants in Mecklenburg County. And so it's shocking. And so, it's concerning what it's saying about our immigrant population when you have 30,000 students staying away from school because there's an operation there. And when there's construction sites that nobody's showing up for work, it's saying something about that population when they are living in fear. And, of course, the media has not helped it. Left-wing politicians at the city local level, as well as up to our governor, have not helped it by creating all kinds of hysteria over it. Listen, we've got to respect our Border Patrol. They are law enforcement. And anybody that says I back the blue, you need to make sure you're backing Border Patrol. They're simply doing their job.
And they're under fire constantly for that. Where do we follow you on X or Twitter, Congressman?
It's Mark Harris, NC8.
Congressman?
Mark Harris, NC8.
Congressman, pleasure to have you on tonight. Hope we speak again here or we get you on in Philadelphia. Have a great Thanksgiving, and thanks for your work on this.
Thank you, Dom. You do the same. God bless you.
All right, Congressman Mark Harris, a lot of bills, a lot of stuff moving forward yesterday. Charlotte, go figure. I've only been there once, that North Carolina would have. It's just not a place, and you heard what he said, the number of kids out of school around this. And, of course, this cashless bail thing, where I am in Philadelphia, we're still holding the line that you have to have bail. But all it means is the guy that was arrested 14 times just says, yeah, I'll come back. If he even said that, the judge says, fine, we'll see you then. He kills somebody, of course. It never starts out, or almost never, with a murder. It builds up again and again and again. Career criminals getting away with it. Then they murder that poor, innocent woman. All right, want to take your calls next at 833-482-5337. You can get in on this back and forth with Slotkin and Crow and people like that and President Trump. If it's sedition, the penalty could be the death penalty. Is that too harsh? It's constitutional. My name is Dom Giordano, sitting in on America at Night on Westwood One.
Thanks for what you do. You have so many people. You ask the questions that if a viewer had a microphone, they would ask that question, and you seem to always ask it right at the right time. So God bless you, my friend.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
It is America at Night. It's Dom Giordano sitting in tonight. Follow me on Twitter at DomShow1210, at DomShow1210. I'm getting ready for a big event. This guy's ubiquitous. He is just out there all the time. He's the best. And we had him on recently, Scott Jennings, bringing him to town. And I'm telling you, people are excited by this. What he does on CNN is unbelievable. All right, got a story I've been working on for the last few hours. Let me give you the best summation I can. The Coast Guard, the Washington Post went way too far, and we're seeing the blowback on this. They were reporting that the Coast Guard was going to say that swastikas, nooses, maybe the Confederate flag, were not hate crimes or something of that nature. They were going to change things up. So apparently the Coast Guard, of all places, is trying to rewrite their regs on various stuff. And it does seem to me that the Coast Guard may have called swastikas and nooses potentially divisive symbols. Potentially divisive, but they were not going to say they're not going to do anything about it or whatever. They got into this woke, wishy-washy language. The Washington Post went way too far. They were claiming our U.S. Coast Guard was going to be allowing and saying, what the heck, swastikas, nooses, Confederate flags, etc. Okay? Now, particularly the one that should jump out, where is there any doubt? What are you fooling around with swastikas for? In the military, which the Coast Guard is. We're talking about the military here. So the best that I can tell you, and we'll see more tomorrow, more statements and all this, they were revamping their code, and sometime December 15th, the new guidelines would come out on harassing behavior. And I guess they wanted to say that, yes, these things are potentially divisive. No, they are divisive. You're going swastikas and all. What do you mean they're potentially divisive? But they were not saying, well, this will be allowed. That's where the Washington Post went. Once again, the media goes too far. Even if there's something legitimate here, we ought to be looking at. I mean, you can't be having swastikas and nooses and all this in the military. Of course, that wouldn't be good for what, my God. So I bet by tomorrow, the Washington Post is caught up in this. They'll still double down. The Coast Guard's got to clean this up and tell us exactly, definitively, and this comes under Homeland Security. So it would be Kristi Noem, what exactly is the guidelines, the rules now? All right, let me go to Alan in Alexandria on WMAL. Hey, Alan, welcome in.
Thank you, Don. I appreciate you taking my call.
You're welcome.
I think that these military, Benedict Arnold was in the military. I was in the military. Okay, if I go out and shoot somebody, the fact that I was in the military doesn't, I don't get a pass. Oh, he's a veteran.
Right.
So he can go out shooting people. And they are really flooding. I didn't realize they had 30,000 students from illegal aliens in Charlotte. Okay.
Yeah, Alan. Well, what happened is they're taking off. I think there was an absentee rate of about 65%. I knew there was a problem there, but not like this. And Raleigh, who guesses Raleigh is an illegal haven?
This is my point. They're flooding the zone to change they are attempting to change the demographics of America.
Yeah.
Okay. Those people have parents who vote. I've talked to people in Alexandria, Virginia. Incidentally, the other day I saw like 2 Lamborghinis in Alexandria, Virginia. Nice ride.
Martha Raddatz is there, and Martha Raddatz doesn't have any problem, if you remember, that housing developments were taken over in Aurora, Colorado. She said only 1. Oh, I guess that's okay, by the Venezuelan drug gangs.
Well, those kids that were absent in Charlotte, their parents vote. The vast majority of them vote. And they say, well, they're illegal, they can't vote. And I'm telling you, no, that's not the case whatsoever. I was earlier at the library. That's a voting poll, and some guy walked by, and I'm hanging out with the Republicans, and he called us a fascist. He said, "Get the hell out of here, fascists!" And I told him maybe Santa will bring you a dictionary for Christmas.
All right, nicely played by you, Alan. Thank you. Thanks for your service. Have a good Thanksgiving. All righty, 833-482-5337. You get on board. You heard the congressman. So come on, Coast Guard. You can't put this in as a guideline. They're reacting to what they think is woke stuff. I get it. But saying the swastika is potentially divisive. Let's start with the swastika. Come on. You don't want to be like the other side. You don't want to come up with crazy definitions. Well, how do you know, Dom? It's just a symbol. No, we know what's going on here. Don't be using the swastika. Next guideline. The noose Okay, I can't think of any other reason or what this symbolizes. And then the Confederate flag and all. But the Washington Post is accusing them of more. They're essentially saying they want to codify this where hateful behavior and symbols will be allowed. I don't think they're doing that at all, but I don't think they ought to be wishy-washy. If you can't say the swastika is not potentially a divisive symbol, come on, it is. What other, you see a swastika, it's potentially a problem. Nah, you know exactly what you're dealing with here. You're not going to buy any cockamamie arguments of histories of this and weirdo stuff. You're going to say, nope, get rid of it. Don't be doing that. Or if you are, then I know exactly who you are. Okay, 833-482-5337. That will get you on board. And with the military, with Slotkin and these others, they are all outraged now. How dare President Trump say this? Look, Trump should have tightened up the language on this. But the thought was, you are engaged here. This isn't like fooling around with politics inside the federal government. You are dealing with life and death, and you got caught. All of you got together. You conspired in some way, shape, or form to put this out. You still won't tell us of any imminent threat, but you're saying Trump's got 3 years. He's that dangerous. That's even worse. If you said, hey, we don't like what Trump's doing with the Venezuelan drug boats, you may have to do something with that. So we want you to know that you might be able to refuse that order. It's that iffy. No, they're saying Trump himself is this iffy. At any moment, he might tell you to do anything to America. That's what they're saying. And they're trying to appeal to all that no kings nonsense. That's what it's about, to the general public. And to Alan's point, we commend their military service or intelligence service, but the bottom line is they're using that as a shield against any critique of what they're doing. And the fear is that impressionable people in the military may be thinking, I'm a patriot here, maybe I ought to say something about this. And off we go to the races. The smarter ones here, Slotkin, Mark Kelly. I'm really surprised at Mark Kelly. Some of the others, this Crow guy really has an edge. We played you a lot of his stuff. I'm not surprised. But going after Martha McCollum in this, that she's not pro-military. Now they're caught. They're coming up with straw men to try to get their way out of this. And they're trying to say Trump is ordering people to kill them. Nothing of the kind here. Although, again, it would have been smarter strategically if Trump had put it in a more buttoned-up way. 833-482-5337. That gets you on board tomorrow. Mondami in the White House with President Trump. Now, Trump is a New Yorker, wants New York City to succeed. So I don't know that Trump is going to read him the Riot Act. But it's going to be interesting to see what Mondami wants. What's the takeaway? What does he want from the federal government? And, of course, Dick Cheney's funeral today. I interviewed Vice President Cheney way back when he and Bush were running for office, and I think he had a heart incident. He came on my show. It was the only interview. Somehow or another, I got it. And he said, everything's fine, Dom. Just got off the treadmill for like a half hour. I was like, oh, my goodness. I am fine that Trump did not go or want to go, and they didn't want Trump to go. That's fine. It was handled in a dignified manner, but clearly. And Trump's biggest legacy in the end is something that Cheneys don't get. Trump is not going to put American troops in harm's way. He might use air power. He might use other activities like that. But we're not going to get into these hellholes where we get people murdered. Their families have that forever. And then the president, like Biden, 13 people killed in Afghanistan in the withdrawal, just goes his merry way. And those families have a hole in their lives forever. Trump's not going to do that. He really brought that to the Republican Party, and Bush and Cheney, particularly the Cheneys, they don't like that. They want to use American troops, even though Dick Cheney had all these deferments, did not serve in the military himself. That's exactly what's going on here. But good all around. I'm glad they didn't want Trump there, and I'm glad Trump didn't want to be there. That's fine with the funeral. Nobody says you have to fake all this stuff when there's such blatant difference going on here. All right, more calls are coming up. 833-482-5337. 5337.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
After the guest leaves every night and we're doing open phones, kind of at the heartbeat of America. And you sit there in this radio studio and suddenly you hear voices. Mobile, Dallas, New York, Miami. And there's kind of a conglomeration of America all in one room.
That's America at Night. That's what we do here. Dom Giordano, pinch hitting tonight. Follow me on Twitter at DomShow1210. This is Cut 7. Here's a little bit of Liz Cheney, and I've interviewed in person Liz Cheney. I actually drove in the then Second Lady, Mrs. Cheney's motorcade on something, interviewing her. So I understand that somewhat, but I understand their revulsion at Trump is because they want to put the American military in all the way around the world. And Trump is not going to do that in almost any circumstance. Here's Liz Cheney today eulogizing her dad.
But distinguished guests, presidents and vice presidents, dear friends, my mom and Mary and I and our families thank you for being here to honor the good and great man we loved so much. A few years ago, reflecting back on nearly 40 years in public service, Dick Cheney said this: "The path I had traveled was partly due to the circumstance of my birth. Not that I had been born into a powerful or privileged family. I wasn't. But I was born an American, a blessing surely among life's greatest." My dad thought deeply about what this blessing meant, about the duties it imposed. Shortly after he became Secretary of Defense in 1989, he described departing from the Pentagon. "As my helicopter lifted off the Pentagon helipad, I could look across the river to the great monuments of Washington, Jefferson, and Lincoln, to the White House and the Capitol building, where all the great decisions that have shaped 200 years of American history were made. And I could look directly out on Arlington National Cemetery and remember what a terrible price thousands of brave Americans have paid so that all of us could enjoy the blessings of liberty." My dad's devotion to America was deep and substantive. He spent his life studying the history of our great republic. He knew you couldn't truly appreciate what it means to live in freedom if you didn't understand the sacrifices of the generations who came before.
All right, fair enough. Now, this antagonism with the Cheneys and Trump, Dick Cheney was a reviled figure by the media. Many times unnecessarily, many times wrong. You know that, and I know that. And yet, they had this antagonism with Trump as some sort of interloper to their ideas of the Constitution, etc. And Liz Cheney, serving on the January 6th committee that was rigged, and we couldn't get any Republicans on there to see the inner workings of that, is outrageous. So, it was a good thing. They didn't want Trump there. Trump and Vance didn't want to be there. There's a break. They, Cheneys and Bush, but maybe even more the Cheneys, represent the old line of the Republican Party. And Trump voters in these three elections that he's run for president, they were voting every bit as much against these neocon policies of people like the Cheneys as they were voting against progressive policies on the other side. In fact, it might enrage them even more to see these people lionized and to realize the damage that they engaged in. They were all in favor of illegal immigration. We stopped Bush ultimately pretty close to getting so-called comprehensive immigration reform, which meant citizenship, illegal behavior, etc. Look at Jeb Bush. Look at how pathetic he was running for office. Their time is over, Now we'll see after Trump's time, does it continue in the manner of the things that Trump has brought in, or do we see some kind of return to the vestiges of the Bush-Cheney era? All right, phone lines, 833-482-5337.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, welcome in, everyone. So we have some new jobs numbers today, and what they tell us is a couple of things are going on. For one reason, you're seeing more of a surge of American-born job holders, and you're seeing a drop-off of those who were not born here. So what's happened is self-deportation and deportation have made it where more Americans are back in the labor force, and on the other side of it, fewer people that are here from that were not born here and or illegal. And that's a good thing. These numbers were good today for September, close to outstanding, and that's a plus. And the Trump administration, I think, has gotten their sea legs here as far as how they're approaching affordability, how to message it, how to bond with the American people, how to stop saying it's a hoax. There are real problems associated with this, including housing. And if they can start to turn some of this around, that's going to matter when we get to the midterms. Because right now, Democrats look like they're doing fairly well, much better than before the last election cycle as we gear up for the midterms. But it's an eternity until that vote. You can just imagine the things that we're going to go through. And Mamdani, tomorrow, here's a little bit, this will be cut to, the new mayor of New York is going to be involved with President Trump in a meeting tomorrow. Here's what he said his agenda will be, cut to.
Do you think a lot of people go into meetings with Donald Trump, I think, thinking they're going to be the one to get over on him. And I sometimes often think, I've watched this now for 10 years, they screw up because they think they underestimate him. Like, what is your goal for a meeting with Donald Trump? What do you want to come out of a meeting with Donald Trump?
I want to just speak plainly to the president about what it means to actually stand up for New Yorkers and the way in which New Yorkers are struggling to afford this city. And frankly, cost of living is something that I heard time and time again from New Yorkers about why they voted for Donald Trump. And this is something that is only continued in the last few months of this year, where we're hearing about childcare concerns, rent concerns, Con Ed concerns, even just getting on the bus, just $2.90. And just to make it clear to the president that this is what we're talking about, these are the stakes for New Yorkers and their ability to keep calling this city their home.
It's going to be fascinating tomorrow to see how that plays out. But Chris Hayes there is right about one thing. People underestimate Trump. They think he's going to be this different type of figure. Bill Maher talks about that. My experience in the Oval Office with him was unbelievable. First of all, how entertaining he can be. Second of all, how he cuts to the chase on the core of various issues. Something maybe in public you don't see, but in smaller groups, you definitively see it. So I'm sure tomorrow night on America at Night, we're going to be talking about this because Mamdani complaining about inflation. Well, what are the policies that cause that? And what is he going to do to stop it? Not much. He's going to increase it. All right, a lot more about that coming up. Dom Giordano pinch hitting on America at Night on Westwood One.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
All right, Dom Giordano sitting in tonight. I got a great guest I'll tell you about coming up here in about 15 minutes. Something we touched on has really taken off since yesterday, though. I told you that in Pennsylvania, and this guy has been running since he's in 8th grade. He might be their toughest candidate to beat. The governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro. Today, well, really Wednesday, when asked about the fact that we have this maniac from Uzbekistan wanted for terrorism there, here illegally, caught with an 18-wheeler and a CDL license that he got from Pennsylvania in Kansas and a real ID they gave him, he said, go talk to Kristi Noem, meaning he blames her for allowing this guy to have free run at us driving an 18-wheeler. Stacey Garrity, who's running at him, put out a news release just earlier because President Trump now has threatened Pennsylvania, and I hope he follows through with this big time, through U.S. Transportation Secretary Duffy. $75 million in federal funding may not be provided to the Commonwealth if the Shapiro administration does not revoke the illegally issued driver's licenses of dangerous foreign drivers. Now, from the arrest of a dozen criminal illegal aliens with Pennsylvania-issued CDLs in Oklahoma to the arrest of this guy in Kansas City, Shapiro and his administration and Democrats in general have dodged all this. So now we're looking at $75 million that can be taken away. A joint project by ICE and the Oklahoma Highway Patrol arrested 120 criminal illegal immigrants, a dozen of whom held Pennsylvania-issued CDLs. And they were warned about this. I've had the people on. They were asked questions about it. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to check if this is still operational? Is more of this going on? Here in Pennsylvania, we really don't even have the number. Then there's the allegation that Josh Shapiro really, by some of the things he did with identification and how you get identification, secretly wants illegal aliens to be able to drive in Pennsylvania. $75 million now we're looking at that are in play here. And this race for governor between Garrity, the treasurer, versus Josh Shapiro. So the Trump administration is not fooling around on this. You know about California. You know about a couple of other states. Now, Pennsylvania has surfaced as an apparent hotbed of this, so much so that Sean Duffy and others are looking at this and thinking there could be a lot more. 6ABC in Philadelphia says it's unclear how many people would be affected. A letter from the Republican administration to Josh Shapiro citing an audit that found that many people potentially have illegal identification going here. Who knows if they even read or speak English, and are rolling down the highway with a CDL license until they crash and kill Americans. But Josh Shapiro blames the Trump administration. It's always the Trump administration. Now, a lot of this started with Biden. They're trying to clean it up. But again, the stakes have been raised tonight on this. It's not just California and a couple of other states. It's states like Pennsylvania. Wherever you have the governor as a Democrat particularly, and particularly if it's more of a blue state, even though Pennsylvania is more of a swing state, you have, at least in that one raid, at least 12 that might still be out there doing this. How in the world do they get away with it? Arrogance, the media protecting them, the media constantly trying to make the narrative that we're making this up, it's not that bad, until the worst happens, until people get killed, and then suddenly we go back and ask, how did that happen? So be watching for this. There'll be a lot more over the next couple days because Duffy, with the full approval of the president, threatening this $175 million. Will they at least look at these people? Will they at least give us an idea of how in the world they got this, how in the world they were able to attain that, including the real ID. I've talked to people that, even a state senator who talked about how hard it was for his wife to get the real ID because women had more trouble, the maiden name changing or divorce or whatever. They had a lot of trouble doing this. And yet, this guy from Uzbekistan with a terrorism rap and here illegally ends up rolling down the highway, not only with the CDL, there are CDL mills out there doing this stuff, but he rolls down the highway also with a real ID, which you may have had trouble getting. Maybe you thought about and said, no, I'm not going to go through that. Bring this paper, not that paper. I reject it. We need an investigation on that. That's what's being called for. And if Josh Shapiro won't do it, and he may make a spectacle of this, then take away the money. Take away the $75 million. I don't care how much you take away. This has to stop with guys like this. And the fact that Shapiro was also on the bandwagon attacking Trump because of what Trump said about the 6 Democrats in the military, trying to egg on the military to break up the chain of command. Shapiro was right there in the center attacking the president on that. Okay, here's how you get in. 833-482-5337. 833-482-5337. Coming up, we're going to talk with the new host of America at Night, give you all the details on that. I think you've heard his voice over the years, sitting in for Jim Bohannon, then sitting in on America at Night many, many times, and he's a long-standing talk show host in St. Louis. He'll be with us next to give you an idea of his vision of America at Night and what he's all about. Quite a history that I know of. Dom Giordano, follow on Twitter at DomShow1210. We'll meet the new host next on America at Night.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Dom Giordano pinch hitting tonight on America at Night, and it's my honor, part of the duties of filling in here, to introduce you to the new host of America at Night, the storied franchise from the Jim Bohannon era through America at Night. Let's welcome to his show, or back to the show, McGraw Milhaven. McGraw, congratulations. Welcome to your show.
Dom, how many times have you introduced someone to their own show?
I was looking today on my resume. I may have done this once before. I was trying to figure that out. It is a weird situation, but it's all good, McGraw. Thank you for coming on tonight to your own show.
No, thank you for having me on the show. Thanks for filling in. Radio is a weird and strange business, and we put everyone has to go through this, and it's an honor, and I'm happy to spend a couple minutes with you. We've met briefly a couple times.
I know we have.
One of those,
yes.
One of those conventions. We haven't had a chance to talk much on the air, but you are a legend in and of yourself. So it's an honor to have a chance to talk with you.
Well, a lot of history with you, both in St. Louis radio, the Bohannon Show, and then America at Night. Give us an idea of your style of radio for people that haven't heard you.
Well, so, that's such a great question to ask any talk show host, right? You're a talk show host. What do you talk about? Well, I don't know. What do you talk about? I told this story recently. I've been in radio 30 years, and I first got into it doing sports. And I remember the first week I was done on Friday, and I remember walking home on Friday thinking, I've said everything I want to say. There's nothing there's nothing left to be said. I filled up 10 hours of talk. I don't know what I'm going to talk about on Monday. Right? That was 30 years ago. So, look, I think late night radio. First of all, I come from a long line of storytellers.
Yes.
Some told stories behind the bar. Some told stories in front of the bar.
But we all tell stories, and we're storytellers, and we love a good story, and we love a good yarn. And late night radio lends itself to nice conversations, interesting conversations, great conversations. And so the goal of the show is to find people who tell great stories and tell them, listen to them, and probably tell some of my own.
Well, that fits perfectly with it. I agree with you completely. And you've done some films, too, McGraw. I went back and took a look. Tell us about that. What kind of films have you been in?
Well, I mean, to say I'm an extra on a number of films is to, is to talk quite a bit about my movie career. No, I got into radio because I didn't know how to get another job, to be honest with you. I graduated from college, and I opened up the Help Wanted ads, and, I applied for numerous multi-level marketing jobs that I was never really good at. And then every once in a while you'd run across somebody who was, hey, we're filming a movie and we need extras. So I was sure. So I went on a couple of shoots and did a couple extras. I was on a Diagnosis Murder with Dick Van Dyke.
Wow.
And yeah, you'll like this story. So it was with Dick Van Dyke. It was a Diagnosis Murder. And as an extra, you just stand all day. And, after 7 hours of standing, they might need you to, walk down a hallway in a hospital. So I was on my feet for 6 or 7 hours, and my feet were killing me. So those director's chairs where they have, Dick Van Dyke, and they have, I think Scott Baio was on this episode or something.
Whoa, wait a minute. Now, here's the story. You got to lead the night with it. You're on a thing with Dick Van Dyke and Scott Baio. Now, that's
Hold
Hollywood.
on a second.
Yeah.
Hold on a second. And Suzanne Plachette. Okay.
Oh, my God.
So I see the Suzanne Plachette director's chair, and she hasn't sat in it all day. I haven't seen anybody. Right? We're in the extra room. And so I sit in the Suzanne Plachette chair. And it's like, oh, my goodness. Oh, thank goodness. Right? So I'm there for a good 5 minutes. And Dick Van Dyke comes over to the chair and whispers in my ear, could you do me a favor? I said, oh, my goodness, Mr. Van Dyke, what do you need? I'll do anything. He says, can you please sit in my chair? Because if she sees you in her chair, we're all going to have a bad day.
Oh, my God. Well, you know what? That really speaks well. That's what I think Dick Van Dyke would do.
Right. Well, and so I said, no, sir, I'll stand. He says, no, please, sit in my chair. So he made me get up and sit in his chair because he didn't want to have a bad day.
And McGraw, you say, too, that you've interviewed everybody but Obama. How could Obama resist? You got to get him on in America at Night. He's not doing too much right now.
Well, no, and he apparently skipped Cheney's funeral today, so he isn't doing much. As a local guy in St. Louis, I'm not so sure they were on our radar.
Yeah.
Missouri's a red state, so it wasn't like he was going to pick up any votes. So I think it was sort of flyover country. I tried to get Biden on the show a couple times. He came in, but again, a local guy, they're going to blow you off. They don't really throw many bones to us local guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So what else do we have to look forward to? We get the storytelling perfect for late night. The type of guests that you might bring on.
So I when I was a kid, I grew up listening to Larry King.
Right.
I listened to Jim Bohannon. And as a matter of fact, you'll like this story since you're an old radio guy. Back in the day, when I was listening to Larry King, this has got to be late 80s, I guess, mid to late 80s, some caller called up and said to Larry, hey, I have these bumper stickers that say Larry King for president, Jim Bohannon vice president, and I would I'd like to give them to your audience. And so Larry King said to this guy, no. You don't be giving away that stuff. If somebody wants it, you should force them to send a self-addressed stamped envelope with $1 in it. And if they do that, you send them a bumper sticker. And so the guy said, okay, fair. So the guy gave his address on the radio. Well, as a junior in high school, I get up out of bed, I find a pen, I find a piece of paper, and I write down the guy's address. So I put a self-addressed stamped envelope in, I put the dollar in, and 2 weeks later, lo and behold, a bumper sticker comes back, Larry King president, Jim Bohannon vice president. So now I have it, and I'm like, radio is the greatest thing in the world, I think. So I go to college, and you know how many times you move in college, right? You're sleeping on your buddy's couch for a month because you get evicted, and then you go live over here for summer school, and then you move over there to the dorm, and then you're back over here, and then you graduate college, and you're getting your start, and you move to 16 different places. And so when I got the job for this show, I went straight to my college box, and within 3 minutes, I found the Larry King for president, Jim Bohannon bumper sticker, and I thought, oh my God, how could I hold on to this thing all these years? So a long way to go to say what kind of guests am I going to have. I'm just going to copy everything Jim did and everything Larry did, and they had book authors, they had interesting people on all walks of life, and the thing I'm most excited over is phone calls. Is there anything better excuse me, in the universe, Dom, than hosting a late night show, a coast to coast, and going to the phones and just seeing who's on the other line? I mean, that is Xanadu right there.
Absolutely. Well, perfectly fitting. It's going to be great to listen to you, McGraw. And again, over the years, I know you've paid your dues doing this and a bunch of other things. And this starts on December 1st, right?
What? December 1st? They didn't tell me that. No, yes, December 1st.
All right. Where do we?
You're filling in for another 2 months. What are you talking
about?
Oh,
my God. I don't think I can. Not both jobs. So you're going to be doing both. Where do people go to find you, McGraw?
America at Night on Westwood 1.
Okay.
So I'm on Twitter. I think my handle's McGraw Milhaven. I'm on Facebook, but I'm not a big social media guy. I'm not into that toxicity. I don't get into the screaming and yelling, but I'm out there. We'll set something up so when I start hosting the show, you guys can reach out and find me.
Gotcha. McGraw, an honor. Thank you very much, and congratulations. We can hardly wait.
Dom, thank you very much. You're very gracious. Have a good night.
All right, McGraw Milhaven, the new host. You heard it here first on America at Night. We'll continue with your calls to his point at 833-482-5337. You do that right now. Get in. Several things out there. It's a busy, busy news day. Got a couple of other things, too, coming up. Dom Giordano sitting in on America at Night on Westwood 1.
Night with Rich Valdez.
Dom Giordano pinch hitting. You just heard McGraw Milhaven. McGraw, the new host of America at Night, and you heard start date December 1st. So I'll be with you tonight, tomorrow night, next week, and thrilled to be doing that. Over the years, this is one of my favorite spots to land up to be sitting in first for Jimbo. Never Larry King, not far back, but Jim Bohannon, just a legendary figure. And I'm glad you heard McGraw talk about following. You can't go wrong. I filled in for at least double figures of names that are legendary, like Bill O'Reilly in radio, Lou Dobbs, people like that. I'll think of the others as I go along. And none was ever as beloved as Jim Bohannon. Just the connection with the audience, what a great, decent guy he was. And you heard McGraw talk about that kind of late night show, capturing that. That's spectacular stuff. Talk radio is just a great friend, a connection with people. I started out doing the overnight at WWDB in Philadelphia. We had about 125,000 people a week listening, if you can imagine, individual people. It was the first major FM that was devoted to talk. And that late night stuff, now that was midnight to 5:30, even more the middle of the night, was unbelievable. The connection with people working third shift, the characters that are out there with their names. So you'll be getting great stuff with McGraw coming up. I know him pretty well, even though we only met one or two times, listening to him on the air in St. Louis and here through the various iterations. So quite an honor to be able to do that with him, and looking forward to continuing with you next week. 833-482-5337. Talking about what's going on where I am in Pennsylvania that made national news. $75 million the Trump administration threatening with here, and rightfully so. We have people that are getting official licenses and even real IDs that are maniacs on the road. Maybe they don't speak English. I don't know if they read pictures or how they drive these things or how they get through it, but it's going to be ending. We're going to go after that. That's what the Trump administration is doing. But the resistance is to say, hell no. Somehow or another, we're still going to continue with business as usual. It appears to be the stance of Josh Shapiro. We're not going to get to the bottom of what could be hundreds out there who shouldn't have CDL licenses. They could be driving near you right now. Ridiculous. That and the military thing will continue. And Mondami meeting with President Trump tomorrow in the Oval Office. I don't think Trump's going to be rough with him or whatever. He wants New York to succeed. But Mondami is the gift that keeps on giving. I forget who asked me today, have I talked about one of his first endorsements for a lower office there in New York? It's someone who talked about all the chickens coming home to roost on 9/11. He's endorsed that person. This is going to be the gift that keeps on giving to Republicans during the midterms, because this guy is going to fail spectacularly. He's going to be doing things that fly in the face of reality, and the media, to their credit, sort of, is going to be asking Democrats about him constantly. And you can see how nervous they get that they have to defend or deflect or pretend they're not hearing the question on this. So this meeting tomorrow will be something we talk about tomorrow night, definitively. Something that is long time coming here with President Trump. All righty, 833-482-5337. One other thing. Randy Weingarten is somebody who is very progressive, very much the wing of the Democrat Party, very much a power in keeping us in COVID, kids not in schools, with the American Federation of Teachers. But she's at least sane, in my judgment. Doubtful, the head of the NEA, Becky Pringle. So it comes out today that the NEA, December 2nd, Advancing LGBTQ plus Justice, scheduled for December 2nd through the 4th, the union will hold an Advancing Racial Justice through Union Work. No, they're going to be holding this on December 4th. And here's the takeaway tonight. Uncovered documents show that the NEA, which is the much bigger teachers union, guiding gender transitions and bashing conservatives, calling them an insane asylum. That's right. They're facing criticism over an upcoming training session that will instruct members on how to go through a gender transition at work, including best practices for using gender pronouns and combating transphobia, while also being provided with literature labeling conservative opposition as villains. We're the villains on this. Now, I made this point maybe even on America at Night, but certainly on my own show. One of the things that's amazing today, 130 Democrats again signed on to the Supreme Court case saying essentially boys and men ought to be in women and female sports. Yeah. We're winning on this issue. Realize that. We're seeing progress, and the Supreme Court's going to put the kibosh on some of this. But at the same time, the other side is not giving up. That's a perfect political issue because we reap the benefit of seeing this slowly but surely go away, but not all at once. It keeps people infuriated day after day that they will not give up on this. Let them. This is the ultimate political loser, and here's why. It's an 80-20 issue, meaning 80% of people, you tell them men, boys, and girls sports, they go nuts. The second part of it, with reluctant voters, people that are choosing only to vote because Trump's on the ballot or a presidential election, they hear that one party is continuing to go down this road. They might vote. Many times they do. The Trump people spent over $50 million in the 2024 campaign on exactly this issue. They should have spent $100 million. It is the perfect issue. And today, the second in command over at Health and Human Services under RFK Jr. called the previous person in that position, Rachel Levine, a fraud because Rachel Levine is transgender and was proposing all these so-called gender-affirming cares that are toxic. I couldn't believe it when this admiral, who's second in command to Kennedy, said this was fraud. And they produced a paper today, 400-page paper, peer-reviewed, showing where all these drastic procedures on kids end. But actually talking about this as a fraud and naming the name Rachel Levine, you don't see that every day. They just don't do stuff like that. So conservatives are villains. We're the ones preventing this utopia. And these are the people teaching kids. These are the people that are the foot soldiers of the Democrat Party. And the woman that's ahead, Becky Pringle, she's the one that made news in the Biden era here in Philadelphia at a teachers conference, screaming all the things. If you remember, if you've seen it, you remember it. All the things. Just remarkable stuff. So we're the villains, according to the teachers' unions. And then they wonder why they're vilified, why people cannot put up with, they might like their individual teacher, and I'm sure we have a lot of teachers, former teachers listening, but not these people, the activists that are involved in this. Okay, 833-482-5337. That will get you to me, Dom Giordano, and there will be more of this coming up as far as a look at are they going to rescind any of this? Are they going to continue doing this? Are we going to go down this path? That's where we are right now. The notion, too, that tomorrow for a Friday can be a huge news day. You got Mondami and Trump. You have this ongoing thing about sedition and the 6 Democrats gone after Trump on this, who's saying if convicted, they ought to be hanged for treason or sedition. We're not over with that yet. They have poked the American bear here, and there's going to be repercussions for this because somehow or another, what they've done is wander into an area where you can't go, an area that is life and death, the military. All right, your calls. We got a lot of stuff that's in play here. You heard McGraw. It's going to be a big transition December 1st with him. You heard his vision of what he does. You may have heard him sitting in for Jim or America at Night. And storytelling, people with the story, the fun of that, great stories. That's absolutely, this time of night, what makes it roll. All right, grab a line, 833-482-5337.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
It's Dom Giordano. Follow me on Twitter at DomShow1210. Pinch hitting on America at Night. Let's go to Mike, WLS, in Chicago, Illinois. Hey, Mike, welcome to the show. Hi.
Hey, Dom, how are you tonight?
Good, Mike.
Hey, I want to put something forth that I think the conservative media and all right-thinking Americans are missing, that there's already been a documentary made, we just didn't know it, that completely indicts the Obama administration, Obama, Brennan, Clapper, on all that they did wrong at the NSA, misusing the Patriot Act. And it's a movie made by no conservative, Oliver Stone. I watched it the other night. It's Snowden. It's fascinating. The movie Snowden goes through, and I went through and caught about 15 places where they just put it on Obama that everything they were doing, misusing the Patriot Act to spy on more Americans than they were Chinese or Russians at the same time. Dom, there's one scene where Snowden was on TV being interviewed and talking to his peers at the NSA, and he's saying, I wrote this program so that we could spy or at least get intelligence on the Chinese and on the Russians. You've used it for more Americans than you did for any of our external assaults. And on the TV behind him is Clapper, and it's original Clapper testifying, saying that they are not using the Patriot Act to spy on Americans.
Well, thank you, Mike. Thank you for the tip on that. We appreciate it very much. I haven't seen that. I'm marking it down. We'll take a look at it. Let me go to Clark in Joliet, Illinois, WLS. Hello, Clark.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, go ahead.
So you were saying there's an absolute in the swastika and other symbols that are considered to be.
There's an absolute. We're in the military. We don't want stuff that's divisive. We're not going to go through long-winded explanations about how it could be something else. Why in the world would we allow, given that context now, we're not just out there in your own neighborhood, why would we allow that in the military?
I didn't say we would. What I'm saying is that for years, Democrats and a lot of left-leaning people bought Teslas over, a 10-year period. And when Elon was actually siding with Trump on certain, things, people started painting swastikas all over these Democrats' Teslas.
Right, okay.
And, probably 75% of the Teslas are owned by Democrats. Now they have swastikas all over their cars.
Okay.
So you're saying that someone that's in the military that has a Foot Locker and someone walks over and grabs a knife and puts a swastika on it, that now they're going to be excoriated and thrown out of the military because they have a swastika on their Foot Locker?
No one said that. What are you talking? Why are you so sensitive on the swastika thing? I didn't say that. That's crazy talk that somebody set them up by doing that. You're proving my point, though. It would be seen as something divisive, and they'd have to explain it. Of course they shouldn't be thrown out of the military if that's the case.
But it can't be absolute. It needs to be investigated.
Right. Of course. Okay, yeah. Thank you. Of course. Yeah, we're talking about people that obviously are not being set up by someone putting a swastika or a noose there to try to set them up. We're talking about people engaging in that. Why the Coast Guard is trying to change this to say these might be divisive and getting into that potentially, the symbol itself is divisive. If the person didn't do it, well, there's nothing on them, of course. Why are we splitting hairs over this? Why? The Washington Post is way out of line. They're making like this is a conspiracy to put hatred into the military. It's a mistake, though, to be phrasing it in the way that they did. And, of course, the fake media, the Washington Post, goes way too far with it. Oh, my goodness. All right, 833-482-5337. 5337.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
It's America at Night. Dom Giordano, Dom with an M, D-O-M, sitting in. What an hour. Introducing you to McGraw. He'll take over on December 1st on America at Night. And his style of radio and his theory of it, you can't go wrong. Larry King, Jim Bohannon at night, without a doubt. One other bit of sound. Sean Duffy and people at the Department of Transportation. What a difference versus Mayor Pete. Talking about as we head to arguably one of the biggest travel weeks, if not the biggest of the year. I had to travel recently. Oh my, don't use Frankfurt Airport. I took 60 listeners to Sicily and Calabria. Listen to Duffy talking about trying to bring civility back to air travel, cut 4.
Air travel is a miracle of American ingenuity. We built airports to launch a golden age of travel across the skies. We respected the dignity of air travel and the men and women who made the dream possible. Flying was a bastion of civility. But today,
I'm allowed to put my seat back.
but manners don't stop at the gate.
That's right. Manners don't stop at the gate. Things aren't what they used to be. Some would call it the golden age of travel. Let's bring civility and manners back. Ask yourself, are you helping a pregnant woman put her bag in the overhead bin? Are you dressing with respect? Are you keeping control of your children? Are you saying thank you to your flight attendants and your pilots? Are you saying please and thank you in general? The golden age of travel begins with you.
All right, good advice, too. And you can't see it. I wish we had the visual. In the beginning of that, with the Sinatra tune and all the rest of it, people are getting on planes. The men have fancy suits on and hats. The women have dresses. There is all that. Yeah, you could argue a better age, without a doubt, versus after war on terrorism and everything else. Flying, not a pleasure. Not a pleasure even a little bit. And this trip, I came back from Sicily, having to go through Frankfurt Airport. That's the worst that I've ever had. Sean Duffy can't do anything about that, but civility is always a good touch, particularly around the holidays. Dom Giordano with you for another big hour, sitting in on America at Night. Follow me on Twitter at DomShow1210, at DomShow1210. And grab a line with us, 833-482-5337. All that happening on Westwood One.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Dom Giordano sitting in tonight on America at Night. Welcome in. Would love to talk with you at 833-482-5337. Want to play you one cut first, though. I've never been able to get him on the show. I'm not sure why, but it fascinates me as a former teacher. Jonathan Haidt, he's a big-time psychologist who made a lot of news, maybe it's a year ago, in which he talked explicitly about what being on your phone all day long with kids, particularly say they're 10, 12, 14 years of age, some of the subtle pathologies, some of the things that we in our gut know are happening. And you're seeing many schools now, it's not a panacea, make kids put their phones at least in a box and all that stuff. Well, he surfaces again just in the last day, and he does an interview with the Free Press. And listen to what he says about social media, not just phones, but social media in general, and his theory that girls that are liberal, whatever they know at that age, I think they're liberal, versus conservative girls spend a lot more time on their phones, he believes, and I don't think he's conservative at all, and the pathology, what this creates. Here's what he said.
Girls spend a lot more time on social media than boys. Liberal girls spend a lot more time than conservative girls. That didn't used to be the case, but as we get into the 2010s, when everything gets so politicized, we get into the Great Awakening, we get into the polarization, the illiberalism that is, that you and I have really been, writing about and talking about for a long time. As we get into the era, the feeds of the liberal girls gets much more taken over by how terrible the world is, everything's sexist, you're not going to get ahead. And this is like the greatest era of female progress that we're going through. But liberal girls are sort of caught in a set of disempowering ideas. And my previous book, The Coddling the American Mind with Greg Lukianoff, was exactly about that. Here's 3 terrible, terrible ideas. And if you believe them, you're almost guaranteed to be a failure in life. It's what doesn't kill you makes you weaker. Always trust your feelings. And life is a battle between good people and evil people. And for liberal girls, a lot of them got sucked into that kind of mindset. And it happened on Tumblr in 2013. That was the transition point when certain ideas were developed. So that's when girls' mental health takes a tumble. If you graph out liberal boys and liberal girls and conservative boys and conservative girls, it's the liberal girls who really rise first and fastest on depression. And the conservative boys are not up that much. So everyone is worse off, but being conservative seems to root you. You're not as easily pushed into this crazy world. Being in a religious family seems to root you, and those two things seem to be protective.
All right, something you might say, hey, bring us something, Dom, that we don't know already. Yeah, but saying this, with this guy's background, his science, his credibility on this, is remarkable. It's something we all see and we know. And you have this angst with these girls that is fueled by people who, I'm not saying they're doing it just to get clicks or to do whatever. They're doing it because they believe it. You're going to die anyhow. Climate. Greta Thunberg. Just think of the misery of this. Would be the face I think of when I hear him. This guy's very, very good and talks about how this is warping younger and younger people into sadness, depression, worldview of how bad things are. Sometimes it morphs into anti-Americanism, how bad the country is. We're going to be seeing a spasm of it, is one of the things I wanted to throw out there tonight. We're going to be seeing a spasm of it. Every holiday is an example. And we're on the cusp of what I think is the best holiday. You can say Christmas, religion, I get that, gift giving. Thanksgiving does not have any of that attached to it. It's about families, food, getting together, good times, that kind of thing. And every one of these holidays, people on the left have gone after the story of Thanksgiving. That the Pilgrims were really just trying to kill the Native Americans. And why are we glorifying what happened here on Thanksgiving? Of course, Christmas, the whole war over saying Merry Christmas to people. You can take any holiday, and they've been under fire, trying to tarnish them, trying to make them miserable. And you could say, well, I don't like the story of it. I don't like how it's told. It's not exactly accurate with the Pilgrims. Oh, my goodness. All right, here we go. And then we have the whole specter, and this did start with Obama. I remember it exactly. It started with President Obama and the so-called Affordable Care Act. Do you remember that? The talking points you could download. Take these and bring them up at Thanksgiving dinner. Can you imagine anything worse? At Thanksgiving dinner, the talking points of Obamacare. Oh! So I thought I'd ask. We're 1 week away. And I told you, just back from a trip with about 60 listeners, conservative tours. If you're listening to the show, you may have heard. They do a great job. We went to Sicily, my wife and I and the listeners, and then to Calabria. And people were telling me their problem, because a lot of them were very supportive of President Trump, what they were going to face over Thanksgiving. Even a loved one, a sister, brother, whatever, they couldn't bring them, they couldn't invite them, they couldn't do it because it will start up about Trump. You can imagine if President Trump had said what he said late last night into today about, you know what, we should be taking a look at sedition here, and if these 6 Democrats who put this outrageous anti-military thing, trying to break down the chain of command about Trump, then, yeah, the penalty for that could be death. Could be imprisonment first, but then death. Wow. If he said that anywhere around Thanksgiving, you can imagine, batten down the hatches, what this is going to be like. So I do think Thanksgiving is, in theory anyhow, the big holiday that doesn't have a lot of noise of other things associated with it other than that root of what we celebrate and what we just talked about. Yet, Thanksgiving, both the story, you can't do the story anymore. I don't think too many public schools are telling the story of the Pilgrims in that way. And then 2, people getting together and coming over after too much pumpkin pie and alcohol, or maybe even before it starts. Thought I would ask, how do you deal with that? You know, some people say, well, we're just going to tell everybody, just don't talk politics. You just can't talk about this stuff. Talk football, talk the turkey recipe. That's it. You can say that all you want. You know what happens if you have the wrong people there. And I would say this, since the Obama era and the talking points, and after, maybe even before that, it started somewhat too when President Bush won in a close election against John Kerry. And people were not accepting it. And they started up that Thanksgiving. But the Obamacare talking points, how dreadful. Not just because they're Democrats. Really, that at Thanksgiving? The innards of Obamacare? Yeah, here's what you say. They had the guy in the onesie telling people this through social media. How do you deal with this? What's your mechanism? Do you just avoid? Do you just not go or have certain people come? And that's the only thing you can do? No matter what you say, you know what's going to happen. It's going to get into that. Particularly if Trump says something like he said last night into today. Oh, my God. It still might linger over to Thanksgiving. And you know that President Trump is going to be saying stuff right up until. But, you know, this is a really volatile one with the military and the stuff that he said around this. And if it came close to Thanksgiving, you're in for it. So here's how you get in. 833-482-5337. How do you deal with that? And what's your sense? And is there a holiday that you think has avoided a lot of... The worst holiday to me is Labor Day, not just because of the labor unions. It signifies the end of the summer. I love the summer. Summertime and the living is easy. So that's kind of the worst holiday, if you will, to me. Columbus Day, some of the battles over that, I'm used to that. President's Day, Martin Luther King Day, they're all fine. Christmas, of course, New Year's. But Thanksgiving now is a holiday that used to be just simple. It wasn't complex. There wasn't too much you had to think about with this other than how to cook a turkey forever. 833-482-5337. Do it right now. Jump on board with Dom on America at Night.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, it's Dom Giordano. Hey, one other phrase before we talk Thanksgiving and everything else that's out there sitting in on America at Night. Several people tonight saying, it's this type of stuff we're hearing from these Democrats around the military. And they mentioned the phrase rules of engagement. I'd love to hear from military people. Remember when some of these rules of engagement went too far? In other words, we don't want to insulate from killing civilians or anything like that, but we also want to protect the men and women in the military. And that phrase rules of engagement came up quite a lot. Somebody mentioned it tonight in the wake of these 6 Democrats and what they're saying, and how people would think, well, that's an illegal order. Is it, or is it something to protect American lives? All right, let me go to the callers. Gail in Warsaw, streaming on WLS. Gail, welcome.
Hello.
Hi, Gail.
How you doing?
Good.
Yeah, I definitely didn't like that. I've never been in the military, but I've always supported the military. Always wondered as a kid, why were they spitting on them and stuff?
Mm-hmm.
They got a job to do, protecting us and everything. Fortunately, I was raised upright. But yeah, I didn't like what they were saying, and it's definitely treason, and they need to go.
Thank
we
you,
need
Gail.
to send a message.
Thank you, Gail. Well, look, I'm not going to just throw it out there to if this is investigated and we get at their intent, could it lead to further charges? Somebody suggested to me today it made sense, not necessarily what the president said, the death penalty, but what they done is worthy, at least, and I think Pete Hegseth may have been hinting at this, of taking a look at the pension they get from the military, the titles they had in the military, and maybe those should be rescinded. It's not a freedom of speech issue. This is beyond freedom of speech. They knew exactly what they were doing. They were trying to organize the military, no kings, resistance, that sort of stuff. Maybe that's the area we should look at. But if the president is going to go around, and it's logical, if convicted of sedition, treason, if you will, you could get the death penalty. Button it up rather than just rambling. Don't give them any opportunity to try to spin this into something else. And this is going to go on again today. This isn't ending. Because sadly, they're getting a lot of death threats. I don't doubt that. And the whole cycle keeps on going. Maybe the remedy is to take a look at their military background and some of the things that come from that. And those might be curtailed based upon the annex. I mean, this is similar to when they try to fool with various government offices and tell people, you don't have to do it. Slow walk it. Trump says he wants this done. He's only got 3 years. Slow it down. Stop him from doing that. That's bad enough. But with this, you're putting lives at risk. You're bringing into play all these elements of the military that are different. I had Stacey Garrity on my show today, who's running against Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania for governor. She was called the Desert Angel. She rose to the rank of colonel. She was in Iraq, and she was in charge of a prison. No one escaped. Everything was good. And the prisoners thought the treatment was fair. And she talked about the only instance she's ever seen of illegal orders was Code Red, Jack Nicholson, A Few Good Men. It doesn't happen. It's not routine. So today they're saying, well, Trump has 3 more years. We were giving a general warning about him because of his proclivities. Wow. That's how bad it gets. Now, this is clearly treading onto an area where they have to be questioned about their intent. What are they intending to try to do by doing this? And they say it's just this happens all the time. We just want to reinforce an illegal order. Well, if an illegal order doesn't happen in a blue moon, why are you doing it? We know exactly why. Trump. Let's go to Tony in Montreal, WVMT. Hi, Tony.
Hi, Dom.
The Nuremberg trials established what is an illegal order from a hierarchy in the army or in the armed forces. And the Nuremberg trials settled that question almost 100 years ago, let's say 80 years ago. So I don't believe that a person that's tweeting out a certain commentary as a president of the United States saying that if you are promoting an idea that is seditious, I would consider that treason. Maybe that should have been the last, let's say that the last comment, rather than allowing you to be not only the prosecutor but also judge and jury. You should have just said, "I will leave that up to the prosecutorial
team." That's a good point. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. He's on to the right logic, but just end it at that. Make that point and move on. Yes.
Because Schumer's going to milk this 100 miles past where the plane had stopped on the tarmac. And he is such a crocodile's tears guy. He has no leg to stand on. He's going to be removed in the future by AOC. So he's like rejuvenating his career on one statement.
Tony,
why
I have you there? Excuse me. Thanksgiving in Canada, is it a big deal? Is there any antagonism like there is here? How does it go in Canada?
Thanksgiving is a great thing, and in fact, it's earlier than the American Thanksgiving by about a month. And the original Thanksgiving in North America was not the Pilgrims, but was in Frobisher Bay in the northern part of Canada when the original British landed here. And Frobisher decided to throw a little bit of a Thanksgiving because he had landed in the northern part of James Bay, which is near the Hudson's Bay. It is an incredible holiday. We take the same amount of time and care that you do. Families get together Monday. Here it's Monday off. Football is on Monday. And rather than the Thursday like in the U.S., it is not a political thing, and little political commentary. It's usually a family gathering. It's keeping the connections to your extended family, and it's a huge thing in Canada. In fact, the Italians always promote an Italian version of it. In our house, it's lasagna and all kinds of things like ricotta and scallops.
Well, Tony, I got to get there because if there's lasagna, that's Italian on Thanksgiving. Thank you, Tony. Tomorrow I got to ask you about Boxing Day if you call in, the day after Christmas in Canada, at least what I'm told. All right, that's exactly what I was looking for. Jump in. 833-482-5337. Dom Giordano sitting in tonight on America at Night. And all this happens on Westwood 1.
Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, Dom Giordano, pinch hitting on America at Night, former teacher. And I'm taking a look at this story out of Virginia Beach where we have the assistant principal, the vice principal, and his brother. What are they charged with? Allegedly plotting to kill ICE agents. The vice principal usually handles discipline in the school. Sitting in there plotting, allegedly, to kill ICE agents. It's almost hard to believe. Just incredibly hard to believe. But we'll see how that story moves forward. But it just grabbed my attention tonight. Let me go to Mike is it Harpswell, Maine? Oh, no, Mike. Okay, let's go to Jane in, it's 833-482-5337. You can jump on board with Dom, talking about a holiday in which all hands are on deck that used to be pretty simple, Thanksgiving. And this coming from the story I told you of this young woman from the Hyatt guy, the guy who is the architect of all things psychological with kids and what they're going through today, talking about the lowest rung or the biggest demographic that you're going to see depression-wise are liberal girls. And the least or the most insulated from that would be conservative boys. Why is that? He went through some of the factors that are involved with it. But just talking about how each holiday now, and we talk about it in talk radio, and I guess it's been the last 15 years. I don't think we're in the phase right now where you can't say Merry Christmas. We went through that phase with Bill O'Reilly and all the stuff associated with it. But Thanksgiving still has two things, the Pilgrim story and then the dinner itself, where seemingly across America it's increasing numbers of people that just say it's not worth it until President Trump leaves office, because you have people that just won't stop with this. And that includes, after the comments, even though we're a week out around this sedition stuff, how far this goes. And look, if Elisa Slotkin gets death threats, they ought to try to track everyone down, every death threat, bring them to justice. Nobody has a right to make death threats. I don't care what it is, across the board. That's obvious. Let's go to, yes, let's go to Jane in Saratoga, New York, WGDJ. Hey, Jane, welcome in.
Hey, how are you? Yeah,
good.
Okay, can I tell you a quick story about Thanksgiving?
Sure, go right ahead, Jane.
It was always the most important holiday to us, and not all fancy and everything.
Right.
My husband's aunt escaped from the Nazis, and in Poland, went into Poland when she was a young woman. She and her friend, when they escaped, her friend had a 3-year-old and a baby. They heard Nazis coming, and the story gets better. I'll make it quick. They went under a bridge to hide, and her friend, they said, "Oh my God, the baby's crying. They're going to hear us." So her friend held the baby under the water to save all of them.
Wow.
His aunt finally got a boat and people who got her to the United States. And she was this little teeny tiny soul, and every Thanksgiving we would spend it with her. And she would have us on Thanksgiving take her to the Statue of Liberty. And she was 105 when she passed.
Wow.
She would stand at the statue and blow kisses and cry.
Wow.
And thank the Statue of Liberty for letting her come here and be thankful for being in this country.
That is a
She
beautiful
did it the
story.
right way.
And Jane, I would say, to me, one of the highest top 3 values a person can have is if they express gratitude. Gratitude is one of the most pleasing of all human emotions.
% right. Yeah. So thank you. And
Thank you,
she
Jane. Thanks very much. And my memory bank is still going, and I remember these calls. I think Jane called in when I was sitting in for Jim Bohannon like 12 years ago, 10 years ago, 8 years ago, something, and told that story. I seem to remember it. It's something that pops out. Talking about Thanksgiving, though, with Debbie in Hall of Fame country, Canton, Ohio, WNIR. Wow. Hi, Debbie.
Wow. Hey, so good to hear or get to talk to you, Dom, because
thank you
did, well, I'm just going to say, you brought, in my mind, when I was listening to you, you brought back to me Jimbo's vibes. I'm going to say that. Can I say the vibes?
I can't tell you how much that means
You
because I wish each listener could know him personally. He was even a better guy off the air than on the air. Just a sweetheart of a guy. Just unbelievable.
Oh, yes. He brought, that's my first late night guy was Jimbo. And when I heard you talking, it's like, oh, this is Jim talking. Okay. I don't know where you're going to go, Dom. I understand you're not there all the time for filling in. I like Rich too. Don't get me wrong.
I hear you.
I enjoyed his, but you brought back Jimbo's vibes to me, and I hope you go well.
Thank you
for the rest of your life. Okay.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you very much. Well, I know I'll be here tomorrow night and next week. Thank you, Debbie, and hopefully back filling in again. I've done it, I don't know how many years, way back to Jim and then through America at Night. And you can follow me, or, the Odyssey app in Philadelphia, noon to 3, Dom Giordano show on one of the powerhouse stations in America, Talk Radio 1210. It reaches into 38 states in Canada, but who's counting? But thank you, Debbie. That means a lot because Bohannon, more than Larry King to me, nothing against Larry King. He was a pioneer and all, but Jimbo, and you heard McGraw, who will be taking over on America at Night, talk about that and even find that sign he had, Larry King for president, Jim Bohannon for vice president, when this whole thing came together for him. So he will capture that vibe too. I know him a little bit, and I know the type of personality he is on the air. But I filled in for O'Reilly extensively, and we're friends. Lou Dobbs, sad that he passed, we're friends. A bunch of people of greatness to middling and all. I mean, like maybe a dozen national shows. And out of all them, you develop in this job a sense. The one that was the most beloved by his audience clearly was Jim Bohannon. I would say, and I know it's blasphemous, Rush Limbaugh was beloved, and Rush Limbaugh was the pioneer, and Rush Limbaugh, I could point out the difference between him and 1,000 other hosts. But even there, it was more about how he changed America, Rush. With Jim, it was more about Jim the person, even more than Rush. And, the first time I got the call to do it for Jim Bohannon, I was just thrilled because I knew of all that. And I knew what late night was all about. Then it was 10 to 1. And I had started doing midnight to 5:30 in the morning. So, when the phones go out and stuff like that in the middle of the night, you're on your own. You develop and you get a sense of people working third shift and people in connection with this. You hear some of the same callers over the years. People connect with that. It's a club. It's a family at its best. So, Debbie, thank you. Love to know, though, your thoughts on Thanksgiving. I gave you mine. It's saddened that it's more complicated now. It can't just be simple. Oh, what are the seating arrangements? Do you want pumpkin? Do you want apple? Now, let's put this person over here. Maybe they won't erupt with this. No, they're going to start it on Trump. And I'm predicting it right now in thousands of Thanksgivings, if not hundreds of thousands of them across the country. You know what's somebody's going to bring up about Trump. Yeah, these military people were right. They're telling you what he's doing. And look at what he said. Hang them. Even though it's a week away, my prediction is that story will carry just because of where we are. And again, can't we have a truce over Thanksgiving in dealing with that? That would be better. There's a million other things to talk about rather than what we talk about every day, the back and forth on President Trump. Be it football, be it just you haven't seen the family in a while, catching up on those kinds of things that are pleasant, not controversial, etc. I don't think it's possible, though, if you have two people that really differ, to just have a pleasant conversation about Trump on Thanksgiving. A few beers, wine in there, and then we're off to the races. All right, here's how you get in. 833-482-5337.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Dom Giordano sitting in, thrilled every opportunity. I mean, this is just such a line of heritage. As we heard tonight, we introduce you to the next host in that chain here at America Tonight with McGraw Milhaven, starting on December 1st. So I have you next week and tomorrow night. It'd be fun to do that. And hopefully down the road sitting in too. I've done it I don't know how many years. And it's always a thrill each and every time you get to do it. Great folks working with you, the producers behind the scenes, and just the heritage of this. It's different than a lot of other shows that just don't have that. And it's because of the time of night, too, that people connected with this. All right, talking about Thanksgiving now. Talking about the simple holiday that now is so much more complicated. And this fury now over this military thing that we had on night one that I sat in, and each night continuing it with President Trump now. By tomorrow, what's the next wrinkle here? We're going to see Todd Blanche should order an investigation of this. We need to know the intent of the people involved and whether or not they're going to admit to anything specific. We just don't hear it. They continue to say the same things. It's un-American. It's outrageous. Now, the way Trump put it fully, we've had several people comment, right. Could have been buttoned up better. But the thought is, if you are intending to create this type of rift, it's not, I'd put it this way. If you are trying to do this inside the federal government, say you don't like what Trump is doing with the agriculture, and you get some guy there that's going to slow walk the reform that Trump wants, or a bunch of them. That's one thing. That may be unethical. There may be other things there. But we all know, particularly these people who were in the military, about the sanctity of following the order and the rare nature of illegal unconstitutional orders. Why all of a sudden, if you won't give us the premise, well, why all of a sudden? It's because of this. Okay, at least we can debate it. But you're completely suspect because out of the blue, and today one of them, Congressman Crow, said, no, Trump has 3 more years. We're going to maybe, I seem to suggest even periodically do this because we want to remind people, wow, that's a long time with this guy. Now think about that. Think about the mistrust. And when they're hit with, well, you know what? If people in the military are so wary of Trump, why is it that the recruitment numbers are sky high? Why is that happening after Biden? The other issue is the consistency of this. Did they say anything when Biden violated the Constitution by allowing us to be overrun at the border? Did they say anything when Biden concocted what he did in Afghanistan that resulted in 13 military people being blown up unnecessarily by any precaution that wasn't there, etc.? No, they did not. Just like they didn't say anything about how addled he was during most, if not all, of his presidency. You may have seen him today at the funeral. My God. So how in the world do they jump in and do this? Well, because they came together, they thought this was a great little idea. And then when America is appalled by it, they don't know what to do. So now they're moving the story from what they did to what Trump said here. And we're going to see if that carries a day, if they can make that case. And I have one of them right in my backyard. Chrissy Houlihan, who served in the Air Force, is from Chester County, outside Philadelphia. She often lectures us, conservatives and others, on civility. And yet she had the nerve to be involved in this, and she's stunned that we're questioning her motives. How could we do that? She served in the military. We give honor to that. But the 6 that were involved here have a lot to answer for, a whole lot to answer for. They have created this climate that is not healthy. All right, it is time for the final calls of the night. Here's how you do it. 833-482-5337.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, it's America at Night. Dom Giordano pinch hitting. Let's go to Ralph in, again, Hall of Fame country, Canton, Ohio, WNIR. Hey, Ralph, welcome in.
Hey, how are you?
Good, Ralph.
Hey, this is all about them realizing that they're not going to be dealing with regular judges. They are now realizing that they are dealing with judge advocate generals, the military tribunals, and they are now using Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals, and they are projecting to do what they do best to try to confuse the public of what they are guilty of and project it onto Trump. And they're in deep trouble. They realize that you get into a military court, you have no Fifth Amendment right. Those things go lightning speed, and I mean, it could all be done in a day, a couple days. There are no appeals.
Yeah. Yeah, it is much different. It is much different. Ralph, thank you very much. I don't know that it's going to get to this, but the thing I would counsel with President Trump is button it up. It's fine to point out the logic of this. You get convicted of treason, you can get the death penalty. I don't know the last time that it happened. I see that Mike Huckabee tonight, there's a lot of stuff, and I love Mike Huckabee. I may talk about it tomorrow night, about someone who was an American who spied for Israel, who's in jail, and he met with him. And a lot of people are questioning that. We'll try to answer it. I may even get him on. Hey, I really enjoy working here. Rich Good, the producer, Alex Hinton, the executive producer. And tonight we introduce you to the new host of the show, and you're going to love McGraw. He's a veteran, does stuff that's fun, and you heard his approach to late night, not the latest late night, but it is late night, 9 to midnight. The voices in the night that are out there, that kind of stuff, the heritage from Larry King to Jim, and then America at Night, this iteration, it's all there. So you will enjoy. But I'll be back with you tomorrow night, and then all next week, and then McGraw will take over. So we have a lot of stuff to cover. And tomorrow night, Friday night, particularly that last hour, got a couple of real fun things I've been waiting to on Friday night. But the Trump story, the Madani story, it will all be out there. Again, Rich Good producing tonight, Alex Hinton executive producing. And thank you for being right there as listeners as we continue. Follow me on Twitter, too, at DomShow1210, at DomShow1210. It is always, always a pleasure, and it was a special night here to get to introduce McGraw. All that happening, it's America at Night, and it is on Westwood One.